Welcome to Multifamily Grit, where we bring in the experts to share their stories of the celebrations and struggles of one of the most important industries in the U.S., multifamily property management. Kerri sat down with Zach Guerin, Executive Vice President at Seldin Company, one of the Midwest's leading property management and development firms. Overseeing operations across multiple states, Zach brings a fearless mix of innovation and accountability to every challenge, from portfolio growth to people leadership. Known for his humor, candor, and sharp operational mind, Zach is a leader who doesn't just talk about ideas, he dissects them. In this conversation, he shares how Seldin is expanding into new markets while tackling one of today's biggest hurdles, finding and developing strong leaders. From experimenting with AI in leasing and operations to rethinking how to mentor the next generation, Zach opens up about the realities of running large-scale teams in a changing industry. You'll hear how he challenges his teams to meet KPIs or risk being replaced by AI, and how that bold move not only sparked motivation, but also inspired a deeper look at efficiency, culture, and what it really means to lead with impact. Zach's approach is as direct as it is thoughtful, balancing tech innovation with humanity, structure with flexibility, and results with humor. Today, we dive into the intersection of leadership, automation, and accountability, and what it means to stay adaptable in a world where property management is rapidly evolving. Before we get started, this episode is sponsored by Fortress, the only core property management operating system built with an emphasis for affordable owners and operators. Fortress revolutionizes affordable management with features focused on automating housing assistance charges and payments to keep ledgers clean and accurate, centralizing file reviews and document storage through Fortress and AWS, and a free in-system smart waitlist to ensure your property stays in compliance. And don't forget, if you like what you hear today, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who'd enjoy this episode. Now let's get into it. Here's Kerri Davis sitting down with Zach Guerin for a conversation about innovation, leadership, and the power of challenging the status quo. Zach, thank you so much again for being here today.
Yes. It was a long journey, but here we are.
It took us only 30 minutes to get up and running because, today, the day we're recording this is October 20th, and AWS is having an outage, which apparently is affecting like 30% of the US, of like industries in the US. So I don't know. This is incredible, but the infrastructure of the US runs on AWS apparently, which is crazy. And so the software we're using to record this podcast is having itself a moment. So it took us 30 minutes to get here.
I think almost every software is having moments. I mean, even like I was trying to pull reports today and it was not working. I was like, okay, cool. This is great.
Yeah.
Love
Everything's
this.
down.
Love it.
I feel like if AWS goes down, we should just have a holiday.
I agree.
Like,
this actually should be marked as a holiday moving forward into the future.
Yeah, there you go. I love it. Well, thank you for your patience with me, Zach. It was kind of fun. We were like on the phone and then we were on this. Like we couldn't see each other. It was so fun. But we made it. We're persistent, if anything. We're persistent humans.
I will say, I think that anyone in property management, like that is the biggest thing. That's like all of our strength is persistence. So
So true. Hence I call the podcast Grit, because I feel like you have to have an immense amount of grit to stick it out in multifamily, for sure. So actually, we'll lean into that for a minute. So before we dig in, would you mind sharing with our listeners how you got your start in this gritty industry?
I think that's my least favorite question because I get asked it all the time and I never have a good answer. Like everyone always has like these creative answers, whereas like mine was like just dumb luck of falling into the industry, right? I was in hospitality and then I went from hospitality to property management, which is like kind of the same, except for in hospitality, your guests check out, which I love. But, I guess when it comes to property management, it's just like trying to find ways to elevate it to make it feel more like a guest customer service experience so that you have happy residents, right? So anyways, I honestly just fell into a job as a leasing specialist at a lease up property back in the day when I was young. And then like from there, I just kind of like skipped around. I just did what every person in their youth does when they're in property management, just jump to, each company until you kind of find one that starts like hitting your vibe. But I was also like in my early 20s. And so I was so focused too on like where I wanted to be in life financially. And so I kept really just applying for growth. And I think that we still see that a lot now too, where people just apply for growth. And I eventually like randomly applied for like an asset manager job, which I had no business doing at the time that I applied for it. And I think I was like rage applying at another job that I had at one point or another. And I ended up getting a call from this human resources director, and she was like, "Oh yeah, we want to bring you into interview for this asset management role." So while I'm sitting there, they're like, "Actually, we're hiring for like an area district manager instead. It seems like your resume is like more property operations focused." And I was like, "Yeah, definitely." I was like, I've really primarily had site level experience. And they were like, "Well, like what would you look for?" And I was like, "Well, I'm really just looking for a company that's like willing to take a chance on me." And like let me like lead. And so Don May, who was the CEO of it was actually a housing authority at the time. That's how I fell into affordable housing. He was like, "Yeah, well, we're going to give you a shot." So he brought me on board as a regional like district area manager for the properties that they owned and managed. And from there, I just kind of grew into a director of property management, to a COO, and then most recently, I'm a vice president of property management at Seldin Company. So,
Oh, that's awesome. I think it's actually a great story. I also think it highlights the fact that, like hospitality is such a well-known
yeah,
industry,
yeah,
but like, what the hell is it about property management that like we don't get like, like hospitality has like you could take graduate courses in
yes,
hospitality. And yet like property management is just this like little thing that people just like fall into when they're moving in or out of their apartment
yep,
communities for the first time. And then someone notices how awesome they are and asks them if they want to be a leasing consultant and get a discount on their rent. They're like, why is property management not one of those industries that is being like taught? It's huge. It's one of the largest industries in the US.
yeah, yeah.
What's with that?
Yeah. No, it is wild to me, especially because there's no proper training for it. And I mean, you can get into all the weird nuances, like the fact that we have to have brokerage license to sign one agreement that's only relevant to one site, but you have to know all of the brokerage laws in a state. I mean, it is crazy to me. I wish the industry, I guess, I was hoping it would be more developed by now, where it would have like
Yeah.
specific trainings to it that really mattered. So it could just streamline things in general. But here we are.
Yeah, here we are. Oh my goodness. And luckily you fell into
Yeah.
it. Because obviously you've created an incredibly successful career through it, which is awesome. Tell me a little bit about like what you do today, like what your responsibilities are, what Selden does, like what you guys are focused on.
So, Seldin Company is a third-party property management company. We have about 5 different business branches. The branch that I work for is Seldin Company. So we do strictly third-party property management. There was a point in time where the Seldins did own properties, but those were put into trust, which isn't part of an affiliated like asset group. My portion, though, is I really actually deal with all of our external partners and clients. So I oversee currently right now like a portfolio of about 45 communities, about 4,000 units in total. And that is growing. So this year is like the year of lease ups, and next year is another year of lease ups for me, which I'm very excited about. But I make sure that our properties are like meeting the business plans that our clients have for them. We are doing lease up to stabilization for LIHTC assets. We are doing markup to markets. We are keeping sites in compliance. So really my goal is overseeing like the larger scale operational items and making sure that we hit that, 5-year business plan, and keep it going from there on forward. And of course, to catch all the random like corporate grenades that get thrown at the teams every day and try to make those work. So
Yeah. The corporate
corporate
grenades.
grenades.
What does that mean? What kind of corporate
You
grenades?
know how like leaders will just have like ideas and they're like, "Hey, we're going to do this." And then they just kind of like throw it out there and they just see if anybody catches it. I feel like that happens like frequently where you just like, someone's like, "Hey, there's this awesome idea. We want to implement it." And then they just walk away. And then you're like, and it's just like, what are you going to do with this hot potato? Do you do like hold on to it and be like, okay, like how do we make this not as hot and figure it out? Or do I just, keep passing the buck until this idea's just died off? So
Okay, so I have to ask though, in your position today, Are you still catching the grenades, or are you throwing them out too?
I mean, I think that if we are not, I'm definitely throwing them out. I can't lie about that.
I love
Yeah.
it.
But I don't think there's any part of leadership that you ever get to in any point that you're not catching a grenade from somebody that is a little bit
Yeah.
higher than you. So whether that is the industry in general or a board or a CEO, you are randomly going to be catching grenades still. So
Yeah, I love it. Like Riverside is doing today with the AWS outage.
exactly.
There you go. There's grenades coming all over the place. Okay, I love that. I love your corporate grenade philosophy, and I love that you're honest enough and humble enough to be able to admit that you lob out a few
Yeah,
yourself.
totally. My team probably I swear they probably have like a dartboard with my face on it. And they're like, there's that idea, Zach. I mean, and then I have to, they always know. So like when there's a grenade that matters to me though, I say this is a Zach initiative. So therefore it is a you initiative. And like, we're going to do this. So
I love it. That's a Zach initiative. Can I ask what's been a recent Zach initiative or one that is just most interesting?
I was going to say, I have a lot of Zach initiatives. The most recent work-related Zach initiative is really a heavy implementation of AI use and software on our sites and on the regional level. That way we are able to be transparent. Like one thing that Seldin's always been big on is that we're a high-touch company.
Okay.
And I try to think all the time, I'm like, well, how are we always going to be able to be a high touch company when you have corporate offices in Nebraska, but we have sites in Texas or we have sites in Colorado? You know, the regionals can only get to properties every so frequently. You know, they can't be at every single property every day. They can pick a property to be at for that day, but not every day. And so how do you keep like communication and what's happening on site transparent to the corporate level? So not only can we support and jump in and help if there's problems coming up, but also like safeguard and protect the assets for our clients, and making sure that the information that we have and that we are relaying to them is accurate. And that's one huge benefit that I have found with AI. Is that now like if ledgers aren't correct, you know, residents get upset, and I'm sorry, but I've never met one office. Okay, I know a few office people that probably like getting into like a street fight with the residents, but none that work at Seldin. People from the past for sure, but I would say that our teams don't like getting into arguments with residents, and so they will do anything they can to make sure that like the residents are kept calm. And so it was like a huge initiative of mine. Like last year, I'm like, gosh, why do we have all of these ledger issues that are just constantly popping up? So we implemented this AI software and that started to call people about their delinquencies. And so you start getting these mad residents and they're like, what is going on? I do not have a balance. And they're coming in with their receipts. All of a sudden, ledgers are starting to get cleaned up. Things are starting to make sense. And we have not had a single ledger issue since that happened because these teams are like, I am not dealing with that drama ever again. So that's just like one level of transparency. You know, the other levels is like, are they answering their phone? What is that client interaction looking like with our residents and so forth? So that's been my biggest initiative right now. And then obviously trying to like figure out how to scale that on a higher level. So
yeah. Oh my gosh, I love this so much. So first, love the Zach initiatives and love the fact that AI is in that, of course, because like that's the direction everyone needs to be heading. Although interestingly, the story that you just told me is one that I've heard several times over now, where a company rolled out AI and it really started to shine a spotlight on operational issues and operational inefficiencies. However, every time I've heard this story, they've actually had to pull back the AI because they weren't able to fix the operational issues. You obviously were, which is incredible. What did you guys have to do in order to fix that specific issue, that ledger issue?
I think you have to train your teams and you have to also admit where you're wrong. I think this is where like honest conversations come into play. You know, if it's something that impacts financials, you know, the conversation is already happening up front with, you know, ownership or asset managers saying, hey, we identified an error and this is what we need to do to fix the error. Instead of just like trying to find a way to cover it up, I have found that what creates relationships in this industry is transparency and trust. And if I can't look at somebody and say, oh, you know, this is what happened and it was my mistake, like why should they trust me on any of the other larger scale decisions that we're having to make? And so, you know, I think that where we had errors, we owned those problems. We related to, you know, asset management at that time, like, There's going to be what's going to appear as bad debt, but it's really just like a ledger correction, and it will catch up by year end. And in most cases, I would say we caught up just fine, and there was like minimal loss. But I think that you also have to have clients that are willing to like jump on board with you. But I think that will only happen if you have those honest conversations, so that you can fix that process moving forward. And then obviously make sure that that doesn't go into play at any of your other properties or like any newer sites that we're bringing on. It's hard because we are transitioning properties over to our management from other management companies. And you get these ledgers that are very messy. And so like you are having to go back in time really and try to fix something that should have been fixed, 1-2 years ago. And it's a conversation we have with our ownership groups all the time is, hey, this is what your ledgers look like right now. For us to have any impact or to be able to like make any real change on the property, whether it be collections, delinquency, evictions, whatever it may be, like we have got to have a clean starting point. And if that means that we need to correct the ledgers and leases like back to the most like recently agreed upon term, then that's what we need to do. And I just think those hard conversations aren't had enough when you're like in a third party property manager seat. You're not looking at it, you're looking at it from how can I constantly make sure that my client is happy and they think that like,
Yeah.
everything is going really well. But the like honest truth about property management is things are never going well. Like it is a ship. It is going towards an iceberg 24/7. And all you're doing is you're getting every paddle and you're like, what do I need to do to get away from this iceberg? So, and I don't think we acknowledge that enough. So yeah.
Okay, that's the best analogy I've ever heard. We just have all these paddles, and they're just trying to figure out how can we get away from this.
And there's water in the boat. And you're like, oh, this is awful.
Oh my goodness. You're so right. Property management is so incredibly difficult. It really is. And it's not even like about the residents or the owners or the funding or the asset type or the weather or whatever. But it's just like in cumulatively speaking, you are managing like a living and breathing asset, and you have so little control over what's happening
Yeah.
in the asset, these people's homes, with the weather, with the status of the asset when you took it over. And then on top of it, to your point, we manage these. We don't manage apartment communities like hotels. I actually say this all the time. I'm not just saying this because you came from the hospitality industry. I've said this all for years. We don't manage apartment communities like we do hotels. Like, right? At a hotel, you normally have like, someone who's running that
Yeah.
property or that asset who's making a lot of money. And he shows up there every single day and he is the strategy person, he's the thinker, he's like, leading that entire team. And then you've got normally, 100 plus people who are working at that hotel, like pulling off whatever's happening every day. And yet in an apartment community, we have like 3
Yeah.
people on
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
property, and the person who's, like, the manager for that property is not, like, the strategic leader of that property. It's usually a regional, to your point, who can only get to that property so often, and so it's such a different, like, structure and world, and yet we're dealing with people's homes, which is way more important to them than their one night, stay in a hotel, so it's kinda crazy.
It is. It is. I think that too frequently we forget that we're running multi-million dollar assets. And I think that we don't
Yeah.
treat our managers and operators that way. Like we need to be treating our managers and operators like they are running micro economies. And I think that the
Yes.
minute we do that, that's when things will really start to change. And I think that like leads us into innovation. Like I didn't get into property management to babysit spreadsheets or chase delinquency reports. I got into it because this industry is sitting on untapped potential. And I think that untapped potential is the human element. I think a lot of people are afraid to, or they're maybe just too tired and burnt out to challenge how things have been done and say, hey, like, let's do this differently. And I think that you start to see that really on like the leadership levels. You see businesses that are like, oh, this business plan and this business model works, and they just like run with it. But then at the same time, there's burnout that's happening. It's burnout with clients, with staffing. And that's really where I think our industry has been struggling.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. What you said there, about the microeconomies and, I think that's so incredible, and I do agree with you that if we were to focus on that, that it does have the potential to lead to innovation. And so I want to, like, honestly, that's quotable. That's fantastic. But I want to dig into this untapped potential and this conversation around team members because obviously, one of the most important things about at the end of the day, like AI is fantastic, but AI is not going to pick up trash from your property. So, like, there's still a lot of like human
Yeah.
needs on these assets. And obviously, those team members are incredibly important to you. And you've even openly talked about to me, at least, like the how it is so hard to find qualified team members. So what are you doing and like how are you approaching this problem of finding and retaining like these qualified team members for the positions that you need them to fill?
So we're not. That's a problem. So here's like, I guess, the uncomfortable truth about property management. It's that it hasn't evolved in decades. And that even goes down to like hiring. I think that when we're hiring, we're constantly looking at people that have experience. They have experience in
Yep.
affordable, or they have experience in conventional. They've worked in this market or that market.
Yep.
And it's like all we've gotten better at doing is managing the chaos in property management. And that includes the people that are in property management. We just are passing these managers around. But our biggest problem really isn't staffing or turnover or technology. I think it's really imagination. And it comes down to just hiring. Like we have built companies on crisis management instead of innovation. And that is, again, back to the people element. I am constantly telling my team that like the numbers only matter if the people that are bringing them and that are behind them are inspired. And like, I think it's really hard to find people in this industry right now that have been in this industry for a very long period of time that are inspired anymore, just because I don't think much is changing or much has changed, or maybe we just haven't challenged that enough. So what my focus on has really been to find somebody that has like a strong personality fit, that they're going to, regardless of how many times the internet said, I'm not going to work today, like they're going to stay on trying to get a webinar to load or to be able to log into a class. Like I want people that are tenacious and that are constantly going to be trying to change the work culture and change the work in general and challenge what people have been doing every day for the last, several hundred years of property management. It feels like, instead of doing the same exact thing. And so, again, like, I think that that's one area where it has allowed Seldin to grow. It's because we keep it pretty simple. We made humanity operational, and we've built relationships that actually mean something. And those relationships are not just with our clients, but with our employees as well.
Yeah, that's so beautifully stated. But you're looking for these people who specifically have that like personality and that they're going to like challenge the status quo and they're going to be extremely like tenacious. But as to your point, a lot of people who have that tenure in property management maybe struggle with that now. So are you hiring people who don't have property management backgrounds?
Absolutely. And it really kind of just depends on the place. So one of my biggest like AI implementation like efforts was because we cannot find like qualified applicants in every single one of these markets. I mean, we're in hundreds of submarkets and they're all very competitive. And this industry, again, hasn't changed in decades. And so like the work has been the same. You should be able to go be a property manager anywhere. Unfortunately, though, that's not the case. I think that what has become hard is like you can go be a processor, but doesn't mean you're going to be good at client relations or customer service.
Mhm.
And so what I have found is that people that have been in the property management industry for so long, again, have suffered burnout. And there are some really great people. Don't get me wrong. Like there's
Of
a
course, yeah.
handful of rock stars that are just constantly on fire and they love their jobs. And the rest of the group, the majority, I would say, that is kind of facing this burnout where they're like tired of dealing with resident related problems or tired of processing applications. I think that is what we are trying to source out. And so that's why we started implementing a lot of AI technology at our sites, is because I'm trying to find a way that we can start hiring people that are more customer and relationship focused than having to be
Mm.
process focused. Because you really do need humanity to add like the reasoning behind decisions, but you want like the solid decision from like an AI counterpart, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's so interesting because I mean, you are like, staring down this tunnel of like explosive growth over the next few years with all these lease ups that you're running, and running, even affordable lease ups in some of these markets right now is extremely difficult. It's extremely competitive. And so you're going to have the right people in place. But defining what that person's skill set is, and like specifically what you need them to do, and what could be supplemented with technology, I think is such a intentional strategy.
Yeah, I think that the word I would go with that I'm looking in anyone that I hire is courage. And it's just like, I guess, I'm talking about innovation. And when I'm talking about innovation, I'm not meaning like automation or apps. Again, it's courage. And I think that's the courage to say no to outdated systems and to partner with things that are supposed to make our life easier. And like, allow that to remove all of the noise so that we as humans can handle all of the real things that are happening. So that's what's important.
Yeah, and I mean, you're not afraid to do it in a controversial way
Yeah, yeah.
either. So as I alluded to in the in your intro, you've told your team at one point that they either hit their KPIs or you're going to replace them with AI.
Yeah, I do.
So tell me about that initiative.
Well, I think something that's like I'm always afraid of is like how are we as a management company always going to be better or different than our competitors? I mean, you can ask any executive, and I'm sure, well, I would hope that they would all think, how can I be better than my competitors?
Yeah.
And I have to say is like I think that at the end of the day, like the future of this industry isn't going to be won by the biggest portfolios or the flashiest software. I think it's going to be won by leaders who never forget the human like equation. And I don't want that to get lost in what I'm about to say. But yes, I did say to my team at the beginning of the year, I want you to do one of two things. One is you can meet your KPIs and I will leave you alone for right now, or you can beat your KPIs and I will leave you alone forever. Said, but if you don't do either of those two items, I am going to be aggressively searching during the year of 2025 on how to outsource your job to AI as much as I possibly can. And I was like, because I have all the opportunities with all these lease ups coming up in the world to give it a shot on my terms where, I don't have to like worry about a site team's like perception of something. And I was like, so I have opportunity right now this year to figure this out. I was like, so it's your year to make sure that you're meeting your KPIs. And I have to say, like, I had a lot of teams take this like very seriously and they stepped it up
Yeah.
and their KPIs have been like killing it this year. I mean, like they are winning awards. They're just smoking it, and it's a great team. But they have also been like, yeah, I want to embrace this AI utilization because they're like, now I'm not having to like call residents to figure out what's going on with their balance. Like I have an AI calling and figuring out what's going on for the balance, setting up payment plans, typing out the notes so that I can focus on my job. And so I have found that the people that have been like, hey, I'm going to partner with you, Zach, on this journey, like again, I went at it from the standpoint of like, I need a better way of finding a way to fill a site because I can't keep it filled with employees at all times because there's so much competition or because there's so much burnout in this industry that now I can say, oh, sweet. If I lose somebody who's been at this property for 10 plus years, I don't have to worry because there's still going to be continuity in how we like are taking care of our residents because now I can hire for that human element and the person that's actually just going to be really focused on the customer service standpoint. And I think that if you actually talk to my teams, and I would actually challenge anybody to go talk to my teams, the ones that have like embraced this have really enjoyed that partnership and they're killing it again. Like I've never been happier. So
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah.
So you obviously, so you had this KPI or AI challenge that you issued your team, and your team is like really leaning into it and is um like you mentioned earning awards and like really surpassing all their expectations and doing all these amazing things. Do you think that it was the threat that got them there?
I think maybe it was the challenge. Maybe it was just the courage of challenging
Yeah.
them and being different. Maybe I'll just go back to that original hypothesis versus saying it was the threat, but it could have been. I would like to think that it was the ultimate deciding fact, but I also have learned that I should believe in the better instinct of people here, or what was it? Assume goodwill, and I'm assuming
Yeah.
goodwill in my teams right now that they were like, you know what, challenge accepted. So,
Yeah. Well, and they've obviously risen to it. So
yeah,
that's incredible.
yeah,
Um, so I think, you know, I feel like I've always struggled a little bit with this. Like, and I almost feel like I would take myself back a little bit and say that I, for the longest time, had an unrealistic expectation of what it meant to be a leader, in that I I would get frustrated when people would be, like, afraid of me, like, afraid to say things in front of me, or, like, felt uncomfortable talking to me about something, or reaching out to me because I was the leader of a company, and I always thought that that was, like, nonsense, like, that's ridiculous, like, that's so frustrating that someone would ever think that way, I'm not that type of person, blah, blah, but, like, at the end of the day, and thankfully, as I've matured, I've realized, like, I can't be that way about it, right? Like, you have to accept the fact that there is, whether it's, something I've done, or more likely something from their past that's caused them to have this, like, fear of kind of either, jumping chain of command, or talking to someone who's in charge, or whatever it is, like, that fear is real, it exists, and you need to address and deal with it. But I think, like, I go above and beyond to, like, try to not be, or to try to be as, um, like, friendly and nice as possible. But sometimes I feel like that creates, maybe less success, or maybe, like, less, of that kind of challenge for people in a way. So how do you balance that? How do you balance that with your team, with, like, being, like, so, like, giving them that, like, hard challenge, and saying things like, KPIs or AI, to them, while also, like, maintaining that psychological safety? And yeah.
yeah. That's actually, it was one of my five like core like provocations that I put together before this. Was leadership, and it was talking about like how it needs to be it's transferable energy. We,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, I like
Well,
that.
I feel like leadership, it's emotional metabolism. You're turning chaos into clarity, and that's what I'm trying to do with my teams. So like, I don't focus on how to motivate them, because motivation will fade. I activate them because activation does stick with them. And I think that one other important thing is like I have taught my team, and it's one thing that Seldin's been huge on too, is that like titles are irrelevant, but the impact that they can cause in those titles is relevant, and that's what we're needing.
Yeah.
And so again, I think leadership is energy, and so when you're transferring that energy, you are making successful leaders. If your team is exhausted, it's because you're hoarding the current of energy. So
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. I absolutely love that. I've never heard it described in that way before, and I love that emotional metabolism. That's fantastic. So, I think that that is just, like, so interesting. So I kind of want to, actually kind of steer us, in a little bit of a different direction, maybe more towards the actual, um, like, more granular operational, impact of what you're doing right now, because I love talking about, like, the theory, and, like, leadership, and the higher thinking of all this, but, like, at the end of the day, it all has to really get done on site, and you are growing. In fact, not just the lease ups, but you're also entering, into a new, I believe, maybe new state. I can't
yes,
remember
yeah,
the
we're
state
going
that
into
you
North Carolina.
North
Yep.
Carolina. Yeah. Awesome. And that's a big new portfolio for you guys. So, how are you working with your teams to set them up for success in both, the initial onboarding and implementation, and how is that going? And then how are you maintaining that, right? Like, you've talked a lot about bad actors, and, like, there's, you know, it's hard, right? When you're hiring a bunch of people, or you're onboarding a bunch of people, it's hard to tell, like, who's a right fit and who isn't, really quickly. And that you're going to make some mistakes, and you're going to have to move along quickly. So how are you setting yourself up for success, and handling this new big challenge that you're dealing with?
So I'm a firm believer in like not biting off more than I can chew at one given point. But
Okay.
so I've been taking it kind of in small steps. And it really started, I had to go out, and fortunately, like, we work with some really fabulous clients. And, one of my biggest things is, if we're going to take over a portfolio, we really need to see what the portfolio looks like before we can give a picture of how we're going to be able to fix it. And so we went out and we shopped these properties, we reviewed files, we, walked units, we talked to residents. I think that what it came down to for us was, is like, how are we able to turn around again the culture here, and how do we like build resident trust, and how do we build resident engagement? And so like, I've been at the forefront of my mind is like, how can we retain residents, but also set new standards and set expectations the Seldin way. But that's going to start with like staffing. And so I'm like, okay, well, most takeovers that happen, like, you usually go out there with a regional, if you're lucky, and like maybe like a task force specialist, and you're usually trying to like just like knock out onboarding and everything. And I was like, we really need to take a thoughtful approach to this. And so one thing that I've really enjoyed about working here is when I've asked, like, can we step back and like reimagine how to do this process? The entire team is really good at stepping back and reimagining the process. And so, we're like, how can we be thoughtful with this takeover? And that is going to start with interviewing the teams that are in place, but also like, interviewing external applicants to see where the disconnect was, if there was a disconnect, make sure it's a good culture fit, and kind of move on from there. Once we have those teams established, then we're starting to move into like, well, how are we going to train these teams? Because again, like, I don't think that the industry has like a talent problem. I think it's a vision problem at the end of the day. I think, again, that we hire a lot for experience instead of curiosity. And so as long as somebody shows that curiosity and courage in their interview, like, you're likely going to get a job for me. And so we had really great interviews with these teams that we met with. We've had great external interviews outside of that. And I think that we found like, okay, cool. We found people that are passionate about doing well now. Now, how are we going to like implement like the Seldin tiers into this? And so we are like doing an approach like over basically kind of 30 days for training, where the first week it's human resources and IT out there getting people set up, while we have a team of rovers and like other executives that are going to just manage the sites, that are going to like focus on getting it cleaned up into like Seldin like operating just like layouts, making sure that traffic is being met with, that we are collecting rents, and just allowing the other people to like settle into Seldin and settle into the company. Because we need to build trust with our employees too. And again, we're taking on sites in a new state that we've never been in. I wouldn't trust a management company. I'd be like, I don't know, I've never heard of you guys before. And so that's kind of like the beginning step. The second week, keeping rovers on site with these teams, making sure that they're like continuing to train them on like the everyday items. And then as soon as our property management software is live, which will be on the 13th, we will then like bring out our training and development coordinators and have them actually spend another week with the team doing like training and onboarding into our property management software, how to pull reports, while again, their properties are still going to be taken care of by other Seldin associates, because I really want them to just like ingrain themselves in Seldin in the first 30 days, so that we can then start tackling larger issues like delinquency and occupancy related problems in the future. And again, part of that onboarding is going to be getting them implemented with this like AI software that we've been using, and make sure that they understand how to use it, so their jobs can be a little bit easier.
Wow. That's probably the most intentional onboarding plan I've ever heard. However, it's also probably the most expensive I've ever heard. How do you guys have all these team members just available to come in and be these rovers for you? So like, where are they coming from? How are they able to not do their day-to-day job for a whole 30 days?
So we actually, that's one thing I think that sets Seldin apart. So we actually have a dedicated team of roving managers and roving like technicians that are not like actually assigned to any property. So they're assigned to assignments, and they usually will fill in if there's like a staffing vacancy, or if somebody went on PTO, or if we're taking on properties and we weren't able to hire somebody. So we just have this like, it's like not fluff staff, because they mean a lot. They're actually like, they make everything go round. And a lot of places don't utilize a roving type, temp service. Essentially, they just hire temps, but like temps can't do anything when they don't know the software that you're using, when they can't access units. Like, they just can't create a difference at a property. Like, it's nice to have somebody answer the phone, I guess, but I can have AI do that for cheaper.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, that's just, that's kind of one of the big things I think that sets us apart is we do have roving staff members that are professionals in the trade and are able to actually go cause impact at the properties. And so that's what those people do. As for like the regionals, myself and like our president, who I'm sure will be there, we still have our regular job to do, and we just figure out how to do it while like doing tours. And it's not hard. You just have to like use a headphone and then, kind of like walk and tour guide a little bit.
Hey, only one thing can be the most important thing at any given time, right? And like everything else, you just got to figure out how to get it done later, whenever.
Yeah.
Well, I love that. I mean, that honestly does set Seldin apart in a pretty big way. I mean, honestly, that's a huge investment and risk to take on in order to ensure that that all the sites are, you know, that all the sites have enough paddles to keep that boat from hitting that iceberg.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's really smart. I love it. So, we've you've talked a lot about how, you're setting those properties up for success and about how you're getting those specific like on-site team members kind of absorbed into Seldin and embracing the Seldin mantra and then setting them up for success on their jobs. But what about leadership? So, like, obviously, having the right leaders in place is incredibly important to you and to the success of these assets. And it's, I actually discussed it during your intro as well, that like you've talked about a lot of like generational shifts in the workforce and how that's impacting like creating and developing leaders in this industry. Um, and you've even talked a little bit about like title and impact. So like what is your take on, I guess, on hiring and training new leaders and how this younger generation is impacting that?
Yeah. So this is like my PC world where I have to like keep HR friendly in my mind, even though like I just want to be like, so I really do believe when we're hiring for leaders, again, you have to hire somebody that has courage and it's like the will to want to do well, but not be afraid to mess up or accept when they're wrong. I think
Mhm.
if you can find somebody who's very coachable, you're going to have a very successful leader. My issue, as a team member for my leaders is that like I overcorrect. And so if somebody's like, you did this wrong, like I'm like, oh my gosh. And then like I will overcorrect it sometimes. But like I'm coachable, and
Yeah.
it's what has allowed me to get where I am today. And I firmly believe that that's how we should build our leaders. We shouldn't just build them based off of their educational background or how long they've been in this industry or, how many properties they've managed in different states. And that's all great. It's awesome to have knowledge, but I really also just want to find people that are going to like make this industry bold again and less boring, that are going to like challenge the ideas and challenge the current status quo.
Yeah.
Because we can't grow as a company or as leaders if we're not being challenged. Like we can't keep, if I'm sure if it was an option for somebody here at one point or another, we would still be using that cellophane paper that you just write on and then it like copies that. What is that paper? I don't even know. Yeah.
I know what
Like
you're
I am
talking
sure that would still be an option if it was allowed, but because somebody
about.
said no, it's not an option. And so like, I think that is, that's like my like values is I want to find somebody that's just going to want to do well and cares about their team. I think that when somebody has to be like, I'm the manager. Or my least favorite is when I have managers or leaders over these regions that will say, well, Zach said this has to be done, so you have to do it. And I've told them all the time, I'm like, guys, when you do that, you're really taking away your authority because now they're not doing it because you asked for them to do it. They're doing it because Zach asked for it to be done. And I was like, and then also you're lying because I don't know what you're asking them to get done. Like I have a very specific list on my like desk of what I want done, and what you told them is nothing close to what I was hoping for. So like, there's two problems at play here. And so like, I really like challenge my team to like own their roles, own their and I also try not to overstep in that for this very reason. Because I want my teams to own their outcomes and own their mistakes. I really like, and I think that sometimes it gets me into some trouble here, is like, I will not intervene unless it's like going off the tracks. Like if we are like literally heading right into the iceberg, I'll be like, hey, like let's pull out the paddles and let's start pushing away from this. But for the most part, like I really do try to like, I let them make their mistakes. I don't put like little guardrails on them. I watch it enough to make sure it doesn't become a legal issue. But I want them to own their teams. I want them to own their outcomes. So what I'm getting to is like I don't interfere on a frequent basis. So I do skip interviews twice a year where I meet with all of the managers. And of course, when I go visit properties, I meet with the managers. But I try to meet with, when I'm at properties, I always try to have the regional with me because I want there to be a continuity in the relationship that they have. I want there to be continuity in process and procedure. I want us to make sure that we are following the chain of command, that, you know, we aren't just skipping heads whenever there's a problem. That's all very important to me. And so I really try not to get involved and be like, why haven't you written this person up for doing this yet? Why haven't you done this? Why haven't you fired them? If they ask me for my feedback or my opinion, I will give it to them. And I give it to them pretty blunt and pretty honest. And, you know, they'll be like, okay, well, I still, you know, think that we can work on this. And I'm like, if that's what you want to do, like, how can I support you in doing that? I will never be like, nope, you've got to let them go. It's time to go. Because that doesn't encourage them to be good leaders. They also need to like have the opportunity to turn a problem around and make it work, or, you know, decide that this is not going to work anymore and come to that conclusion on their own as well, so that they don't make that same mistake in the future. And so that is part of, I think, how I look at leaders is I'm trying to look for people who are willing to make those mistakes and aren't just going to think that they're going to do things perfectly all the time, because you're certainly not going to.
Okay, so love this so much. There's actually a pretty well-known leadership skill in the military, which I was in the Army for a minute and my husband was in for much longer. And I have a lot of respect for it. And it's like it absolutely can be related to the business world as well, but it's just very clear in a military type analogy. So like the best leaders in the military are known for giving an operational mission to their squad, right? Or their platoon or their squad. And so they give them a mission and the objective of the mission, and then they let them design like the operation around accomplishing that goal, right? And if the team comes back to them and if it's anywhere near like an 80% to, like, let's say that the leader in his mind knew exactly like 100% what needed to happen and what the perfect plan was, if that team can get to 80% of it, then you just say, yep, that's amazing, go for it. Because any plan that they built, that they created,
Yep.
that they had ownership in, is going to be infinitely more successful than any plan you give them. Because, especially in the military, but I really think anywhere, right? Like if it's their plan and shit starts to go to hell on the mission, like they're gonna be like, oh shit, like we got to figure this
Yeah.
out. Like let's figure
Yeah.
this out together. If it was your plan and you dictated it down to them and they're on the mission and shit starts to go to hell, they're gonna be like, oh my god, our leader's a fucking idiot. Oh, sorry, but like, but like our leader's a damn idiot. Like so like, what do I care if this mission fails? Like this is his fault,
Yeah.
not mine.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like you give people that empower. And I love that you said, kind of the quote that you had there was like, let them own their outcomes. Like it's so, so true. But now I'm going to challenge you. Anyway, obviously you're following this philosophy of some of the best military leaders in history. So I love it. But I'm going to challenge you though. How is this impacted by the generations we're leading today?
Oof. That's like such a trick question. Because there's multiple generations. Like, I mean, even in like where I'm sitting right now, you know, I'm not a spring chicken anymore, but there are spring chickens.
All right. You're a spring chicken to me. So we're going to let that go.
But I mean, like, it's just, you have to, there's so many different people. So like, I think that there has to be a balance and a middle way in the generational gap. Because you have like
Okay.
the boomers who I think really bring discipline. And then you have like Gen Z who are like bringing the disruption. And so you just have to make them collide in a very productive way. And like, that is how I think you make these gaps in these generations that you're leading make sense. And so like, I don't think it's a one size fits all. It's just like how we have love languages in our life. Everyone has like a business love language as well. And so I think that you
Yeah.
have to just take
Great.
that approach of not one size fits all. And you have to figure out to meet somebody where they're at And then that's how you fill that gap.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was a perfectly PC answer. HR will be very happy with you.
Yeah.
Um, no, I think that's fantastic. And I agree completely. And I love that you analogized it to like your personal love language. I agree completely that, like, you know, everyone wants to come to work every day and be extremely like efficient and happy and productive, and no one wants to sit there and like watch the clock
Yeah.
like go by and drag out. No one wants to just get through the day. People want to enjoy what they're doing. But it does take an understanding of like what innately motivates that person or activates them, like the word that you used before. And I do agree that that's very nuanced. Honestly, Zach, I could go on for another hour with you, but unfortunately, since our 30-minute debacle with the AWS outage earlier, we don't have that time. So I'm going to ask you one last question, and then I'm going to ask you my 2 closing questions.
Okay.
But my last question, because I love how you are truly thinking about like innovating, and some of the words that you've used have just been like so focused on like this future state. If you and I met again in 12 months and did another podcast and hopefully didn't have the same drama, or maybe we could, we clearly got through it. What do you think like an ideal state for you is? What are you talking about with me in 12 months? Yeah.
I mean, I think the next time, oh, that's a good question. Because there's so much, like you
Yeah.
said, I really wanted to, I had a lot of ideas. You have a lot of ideas. I think we have a lot of ideas. I think I want to see, hmm, I think I want to talk about what happens when a management company bets on courage instead of like comfort, I guess. So I want to see Seldin, I guess, particularly start doing that more frequently. So I think that, we have different divisions for vice presidents and we all kind of lead differently. And so like, I definitely want to challenge, and I will challenge. I have a meeting actually after this with my president and CEO, and I'm going to say, I really want to see us bet on courage instead of comfort, and try to be the courageous voice, because that's what's made us who we are today. So
I love that. Absolutely. And I hope we get to talk about it again in 12 months.
yeah.
Okay. So then my last question, so I can get you out of here on time. Is there a story from your time in multifamily you'd want to share with the listeners?
Oh my God. When is there not a story? I mean, like, I have funny stories. I have terrible stories. I mean, I have all the stories.
Dealer's choice.
That's one I didn't prepare for. So I guess my favorite story would be, gosh, dang. I don't know if I have a favorite because they're all so good. Ask me a different question. This is not,
Okay. Okay. Well, my last question is always, do you have a book you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
you know what? I just thought of a story.
Let's go.
So my favorite was actually at Seldin. I was on a road trip with another with a regional manager, and we were going around and visiting her portfolio. And it was the most boring drive of my life. I mean, like, it was like an absolute, just like, it was terrible. I don't know if you've ever driven through Kansas, but it is a terrible drive. Just an FYI. And like, she's very talkative, and like the whole time we're in the car, like, she's like, blah, 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 blah. And then like there was just one point where we were going over these train tracks, and the gate to the train track had not gone down, but there was a train coming our way, and I was driving, and I was like, oh my God. And I was like, we are gonna die. And like, that was the first time I've ever heard somebody like not have a reaction. Like, she was just silent. And then like we got down, and the car was quiet for like 10 minutes. And we passed a graveyard. She's like, oh my God. She's like, I think that's an omen. And I was like, I don't think it's an omen anymore, because we would have died back there. And she was so quiet the rest of the trip. And then every time we drove from there on forward, she's just like, can you please make sure that your map like notifies us before we like cross over a train track or whatever?
Oh,
I know that's probably not like the story you were thinking was going to happen, but that was one of the ones that stuck with me for a very long time.
oh my goodness. I swear I couldn't, like, I've been on so many
I mean,
road trips.
yeah.
And like you, like I'll never forget. One time my VP of sales and I were on we went to go meet with a potential customer, now a current customer, so they're amazing. But we went to go meet with them kind of like on a sales pitch. And afterward, we could have flown home or we could have driven back. And it was like, it was like a 4.5 hour drive. It's one of those drives where it's like, like you could fly or not, whatever. We'd flown there and I was like, the flight, I was like, the flights home are going to take too long. Let's just like rent a car. So we rent a car and we start driving. And we're like 10 minutes in and all of a sudden she looks at me and she's like, oh my God, I have 4.5 uninterrupted hours with you. And like, you can't have your computer. Because I was driving. She's like, you can't have your computer. So I just get to talk to you. And I was like,
Okay.
oh God.
I would have been like, oh, this is my job.
I don't know how to feel about this now. It's like before I was all excited to be on a road trip with you. Now you got me really uneasy. So it turns out it was a fantastic trip. She's amazing, but she did scare me for a minute. I was like, what are you about to do? Like, what are you about to talk to me about? So I get it. Those road trips, I feel like property management road trips and like touring like different sites and like going on those trips, it can be intense.
Yeah, no, it's definitely intense.
Maybe not fear for your life from a train intense, but I like it.
Yeah.
All right, Zach. So my last question, is there a book you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
So I think one of like the most important books I've ever read is Linchpin by Seth Godin. Have you read it before?
I have not.
Okay, so it's really good. It's this radical idea that the future doesn't belong to people who follow instructions. It belongs to people who create the playbook, which is kind of what I feel like we've talked about this entire time, is just like changing how we're doing business. So, I mean, as you, I'm sure know, the word linchpin means, the thing that holds the wheel together. And that's the kind of person I want on my teams. Like, I don't want another just like plug. Like, I don't want a clock in it. I want somebody who's going to actually see a problem, fix the problem. I think what's powerful about this book is that it defines art as doing emotional labor. So like, and when it's talking about art, it's talking about work, which is trying to make our work that emotional labor. And it's caring enough to make something better, even when no one asks you to do it, which is a huge, just like part of leadership for me. I think it's just as simple as when you're walking on a property, if you see a piece of garbage, like pick that piece of garbage up instead of seeing what somebody else is going to do about it. Because you can cause that rippling effect and make all of those changes. I think that what's great about the book, though, is that it is going to, if you read it, it shows you that if you're willing to make these changes, and it kind of goes hand in hand with like my like whole trying to implement AI message, is that if we can find a way to handle the predictable, the linchpins are going to handle all of the things that are possible. And so, and I think that that's what is going to make leadership and property management better moving forward. Because that's how I see leadership. I don't see it as managing people, but creating space for them to become like indispensable. And that's really what I want on my team. So.
Oh my gosh. Absolutely love it. That's fantastic, Zach. And such a great way to end this conversation. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Multifamily Grit. I hope you enjoyed hearing Zach Guerin's fresh and fearless take on leadership, innovation, and what it means to challenge the status quo in multifamily. Zach's perspective is a reminder that great leadership isn't just about titles or technology. It's about ownership, adaptability, and a willingness to think differently. Whether it's integrating AI to improve performance or finding new ways to mentor the next generation, his story shows how grit and creativity can go hand in hand. We also want to give one more shout out to Fortress, our episode sponsor. Fortress is committed to revolutionizing affordable property management with smarter, more efficient solutions that keep communities thriving and compliance simple. If you found value in today's episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with a colleague who'd enjoy Zach's insights on accountability, innovation, and building strong teams through change. Until next time, stay gritty, stay curious, and we'll see you back here soon.